The story begins on a calm summer morning in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the lake serves as the community's unofficial centerpiece. Residents often gathered near the water for fishing, boating, and family picnics, believing the space was communal and overseen by the local homeowners association. To the people who lived there, especially those active in the HOA, the lake was a shared amenity that they felt entitled to regulate. Among the most outspoken residents was a middle-aged woman known within the community for her overbearing manner and constant interference in others' affairs. Neighbors quietly referred to her as Karen because of her tendency to insert herself into situations with misplaced authority. She had a reputation for questioning people she didn't recognize, enforcing unspoken rules, and loudly voicing her belief that she represented the neighborhood's interests better than anyone else. On this particular day, Karen noticed a man she had never seen before maneuvering a modest but well-kept boat across the lake. He was a black man, calm and self-assured, clearly familiar with boating. To Karen, however, his presence immediately felt out of place. Without hesitation, she stormed down toward the shoreline, already composing her speech about rules and regulations. In her head, she believed, as she always did, that she was upholding order, protecting the standards of the community, and asserting the HOA's authority. From her perspective, the boat was a disruption. She assumed the man had no right to be there and likely didn't live in the neighborhood. She didn't consider that he might have every right to occupy that space, nor did she pause to ask politely. Instead, she shouted across the water, demanding that he remove the boat immediately. Her words carried a tone of superiority, as though she were speaking down to someone beneath her. She referenced HOA rules and claimed that boating wasn't allowed on their lake, further insisting that he leave before she called the association board. The man, whose name was Marcus, turned toward her with quiet composure. Unlike Karen, he did not raise his voice or show visible anger. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with her hostility. Marcus explained gently that he wasn't breaking any rules. But Karen cut him off, insisting that she knew the rules better than anyone else. Neighbors nearby stopped to watch the interaction, some uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Karen's behavior, though embarrassing, was something the community had witnessed before. Many were content to let her carry on, knowing she thrived on confrontation. What Karen didn't realize was that Marcus wasn't just a visitor. He was the actual owner of the lake. Years earlier, Marcus had purchased the property outright, including the body of water and the land surrounding it. The homeowners association had never owned the lake. They had only assumed usage rights without ever confirming ownership. Marcus had deliberately kept a low profile, allowing residents to fish and walk near the lake freely. Seeing no harm in their enjoyment as long as they respected the property, he lived just outside the HOA's jurisdiction, making him independent of their governance and their rules. As Karen continued her tirade, Marcus finally decided it was time to clarify the situation. He addressed her firmly, but without malice, explaining that he was the legal owner of the lake and had every right to boat on it whenever he pleased. At first, Karen laughed dismissively, accusing him of lying. She claimed the lake was community property and that the HOA board held authority over its use. But Marcus calmly offered to show her the deeds and paperwork, which were properly filed with the county records. The truth was undeniable. The lake belonged solely to him. The revelation stunned the gathered neighbors. Some whispered to each other, realizing for the first time that their years of fishing and holding gatherings by the water had been at the quiet generosity of Marcus, a man many of them hadn't even known. For Karen, the realization struck harder. She had approached the situation with arrogance and prejudice, assuming power she never held, and now stood publicly corrected. Still, she attempted to recover, claiming that even if Marcus owned the lake, he should respect the community spirit and conform to HOA guidelines. But Marcus, still patient, reminded her that the HOA's authority did not extend to private property, and that her behavior had been both disrespectful and presumptuous. Over the following weeks, word spread throughout the neighborhood about the confrontation. Some residents felt embarrassed for having assumed ownership of a place that was never theirs. Others grew resentful of Karen for stirring conflict that could have easily been avoided with kindness. Marcus, meanwhile, reconsidered the generosity he had quietly extended for so many years, while he had no issue with respectful neighbors. Using the lake, the entitlement displayed by the HOA, and especially Karen, forced him to reevaluate. He decided to enforce boundaries more clearly. Not long after, Marcus posted signs along the perimeter of the lake, declaring it private property. Fishing and recreational use were no longer permitted without his explicit permission. While this disappointed some of the more considerate residents, many admitted they understood his reasoning. After all, they had been living under a false assumption and had benefited from his goodwill without ever acknowledging it. The HOA attempted to challenge the restriction, sending Marcus's letters and even attempting to pressure him into compromise. But the legal documents were indisputable. The lake was his, and he had full control over its use. For Karen, the fallout was severe. He had been exposed publicly as the instigator who triggered the loss of lake access for everyone. Neighbors who once tolerated her bossiness now openly criticized her, frustrated that her need to assert power had backfired so badly. Families who had cherished weekends fishing at the water's edge now blamed her for provoking the very man who had allowed them that privilege in the first place. Her reputation in the community, already fragile, collapsed further. She became isolated, avoided by those who had once politely entertained her, and whispered about as a cautionary example of arrogance gone too far. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to enjoy his lake in peace, though some neighbors reached out to apologize for Karen's behavior and to express gratitude for his past generosity. He remained firm in his decision. He explained that respect was all he had ever wanted in return for sharing his property. The experience had revealed how easily entitlement could blind people to simple decency, and he no longer felt the same obligation to extend open access. For him, the lake represented not just a place of recreation, but a reminder of boundaries. Boundaries that needed to be respected both legally and socially. The story became something of a local legend, retold by residents as a lesson in humility and respect. Karen's outburst once, just another instance of her meddling, became the defining event that reshaped the neighborhood's relationship with the lake. It served as a stark reminder that authority, whether perceived or assumed, does not trump ownership or fairness. And it highlighted the importance of approaching others with kindness rather than prejudice. For one never knows the true story behind the person they are confronting. In the end, Marcus did not need to shout, argue, or belittle to assert his rights. His calm dignity and the undeniable truth of his ownership spoke louder than any HOA rulebook or Karen's misplaced authority. His story stood as an example of grace under pressure and a quiet but firm reclaiming of what was rightfully his.